Sound check. Check one, check two.
Well, hello, Edrie.
Hi, Dan.
What a thrill it is personally to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Um,
A
you
little late at night here, but
it and yes, that is often the case, and so thank you for staying up to the wee hours. You're in close to DC, true?
oh yes, about a half hour outside of DC.
Yeah. Um, we we were talking. I was telling you before the show that I have known of you for a very long time. But I think a lot of our viewers, because you're a very well known name in the zone of voice pedagogy and voice teaching for particularly for contemporary singing teachers, because of the tremendous amount of work that you have done. I wonder, though, for those who may not know you, I wonder if you could take a brief moment just to tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, my background was primarily classical training. However, I could go a little bit further to. I grew up in Congo, and
Wow.
for my formative years, 7 years of my life. And so I was really had a lot of musical influences of different cultures, as well as what my parents were listening to, which were all genres. My father had uh, a reel to reel tape, if you remember those, about 6 hours of a mashup of all different artists from Michaela Jackson to, oh my goodness, uh, Johnny Cash and Judy Garland, and then, of course, Julie Andrews or any of the musical theater shows. We wouldn't hear the whole show. It would be like one song, and then you'd hear another song later on. But so many different artists, Ella Fitzgerald, I mean, just every genre that you can imagine. Um, so I was really privy to a lot of, like I said, different singing along with those recordings to different styles. Once I came back to the United States and was in high school is when I started training in singing. And of course, it was all classical at the time, but on the side, I would continue to play around with some of the other styles, particularly jazz and musical theater. Went off to school at Shenandoah Conservatory of Music and graduated with a music education degree. Didn't really know very much about opera, although we did some operas there, and I also did some musical theater. But my junior year catapulted me into Wolf Trap Opera by just by default. I was in an audition for mainly the grad students. They had just graduated and they were primarily looking at them, but I was thrown in just to make the numbers so it was worthwhile for them to come out to our school and listen. And they chose me. And to my surprise, I was at Wolf Trap Opera between my junior and senior year. And from that, it directed me, honestly, to be exempt from the preliminary auditions for Houston Grand Opera Studio. And then I was put into the Houston Grand Opera Studio, and this opera career happened. Um, During that time, the studio heard me singing musical theater and would farm me out to some of the symphonies that were doing like a pop concert and had musical theater pieces like West Side Story or My Fair Lady or Carousel. And then I did crossover into musical theater in various opera companies. And so I ended up doing both. And being a pedagogue came later. I had this career going on, and I had an automobile accident that took me out for a few years in rehabilitation. And that's when I did my research with Jeannie Levetri and co-founded the CCM Vocal Pedagogy Institute, and here I am now.
And here you are now. I mean, it's
Mhm.
yeah, and
It's a lot.
that last statement reminds me of a particular Seinfeld episode, the yada 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 episode, if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
and yada
There I
yada
went.
yada.
Yada, 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 yada.
Because there's a lot in that yada yada yada, but we'll glean some of that, I'm sure, as we go along today. You, of course, have with the background that you've just told us about, are quite and in fact, when I asked you what could we talk about, you came up with a topic I was very excited about, and that is expression in singing. To kind of frame that up for us as we go forward today, I wonder if you could just tell us a bit about what does that mean to you when you say expressive singing?
Oh, goodness. It means honestly everything, because it's all about the storytelling
Yes.
and how we express. So if you think of it as, expressive singing being more than what's written with the notes and the lyrics, then by training expressive singing, you're training through the musical style, the emotion, and the storytelling, because they're all critical parts of the total vocal performance, right?
Yeah.
You can't just, sing the notes up there, la, 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 la. And so the storyline is, or, the lyrics are often expressed vocally through different choices in whatever style that you're singing, but also the vocal qualities. And that's how we can express the emotion, either having more chest register because we're angry, or something else that's going on, or just doing different variations of chest mix, head mix, falsetto, whistle tone, whatever is going to color those words
Yeah.
to get the storytelling across. But that's not the only thing, not just the tonality that you have, the vocal tone, but we can also vary those dynamics and color the tone, adding darker sounds or brighter sounds, and then also what I call vocal stylisms,
Yeah.
which are going to be those, the stylistic effects, the vocal effects that you add to it, or the distortions, if you will. And I think that all those things are important, plus the ornamentation, the riffing, licks, or however you talk about them, are all parts of expression, expressive singing, and also expressing emotion. And I could go back to the days in Congo, and of course we know all of this goes back to the roots in Africa, right?
Yeah.
So I can recall just the wailing and a lot of the different sounds that were being made during festivities, which could also be mourning or wedding celebrations, or whatever celebration they were having, that some of the tribes would be having, and hearing the different sounds that they were making that were primal sounds that we could all make. And then also experimenting with my own voice, these different sounds. And, each sound meant something different emotion wise. And I think it's very important that we understand that we're capable of making so many different sounds. Some of them are not even, labeled yet. so we don't know what to call them.
Yeah.
But we have, the common ones, which are moan and groan and wailing, and growling
Yeah.
or squalling, some of those distortions that we have. And what we know now a lot through research and science backing it up is that we can do these healthily
Yes.
and not create vocal pathology. And if you're if you're coupled with a good instructor, a good vocal coach, vocal teacher who understands how the voice works, then that's golden,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's hard to find that person.
Because many of these sounds are primal, aren't they? They are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They are.
They're really rooted in that prime human expression.
Absolutely.
And we might I'll just put a pen of memory into coming back to talking about the health of them, because I want to just briefly, if we can, talk about these skills being teachable. That importantly for our audience today, they're learnable. You can acquire these skills in part because it is simply about tapping into that primal nature of the voice. What is it? Because a lot of people find it very difficult to connect the idea of technique with expression. That ability to present. What is it that, for you, what are those connecting sinews, that connective tissue that brings the technique and empowers the voice to express?
Oh my, that's a loaded question.
Not on purpose.
No, I know, no, but I mean, it's hard because
It is.
we're all different, right?
Yes.
We're all different, and we all come from different experiences.
Yeah.
And how we handle those experiences are quite different. So I think if I'm just speaking about myself, it's when I'm finding sounds that are appropriate for whatever I'm singing about and in my storytelling, I'm very careful to not overextend what I'm doing or the sound that I want to create. And obviously it's about the feeling. I'm very kinesthetic and aural, and the feeling that I feel in my throat at the time that I'm doing it, whether it feels very constricted for a long period of time, which is not what I want to do, or if it's constricted for a moment and then I could release it. And at this point in my life and in my experience, I've been certainly have taught myself as well, has been taught to learn how to relax the throat, all through any kind of cool downs or just the breathing techniques, right? Of being able to relax that to a point where if I go to that place where it's a little bit more hyperfunctional, that I'm able to release it, release that muscle constriction so that it doesn't stay in that place. And I think that's probably one of the, by far the best lesson that I've learned. And in being able to do that, I've had to practice a little bit, going into that eat, and then releasing and making sure that everything releases. The other thing that I would say is my right hand thing that I depend on is the mic. That I'm not going to over project the distortion or the effect that I'm using, fry, growl, whatever. I don't do songs that would have squall in it and really, big things that are a little bit more hyperfunctional, because it's not the style that I sing, but
Yeah.
certainly I teach it.
Yes.
Um, and if I don't teach a certain song, I'm sorry, a certain effect,
Yes.
then I would certainly refer out to Melissa Cross. That
Yes.
is,
Yes.
and I know you've had her, haven't you? Had her
We
on? You've had her
we
on
have
this.
had her on
Yeah.
the show a couple of times.
Yeah, or Matt.
Yeah.
Um, because if it's something that they want to do that's a little bit more,
Gritty.
yeah, no, more a little bit more metal, heavy metal
Yeah.
things, and I say, look, I can help you with XYZ,
Yes.
but you're going to have to go to this person
Yeah.
if you want to do a little bit more than that. So knowing where your boundary is with it is important too.
I often refer to some of these effects that you're discussing as, I often refer to them with students as, and I call them high cost items. And that is that they're definitely on the menu list, but one has to recognize they can cost you a little bit more. And so therefore you don't want to find yourself buying them all the time, because that could lead to some vocal bankruptcy. But but you definitely want to have them there as a choice at the right time for the right reason, to express and emote the right feeling in a moment.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one thing that we need to address is, to be able to do all of this, is having the laryngeal or vocal tract flexibility,
Yeah.
Shaping flexibility.
Yes.
And I know my class, when I teach my musical theater singing styles class, every time I bring this up, they laugh. I think about that Finding Nemo and Dory talking whale talk. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And Dory's making all these different shapes and just, ow, yeah. Or what did she say? She said, "Where's your son?" Like that. We want, ow, yeah, and doing all these things.
Yeah.
And so I tell my students, find out what you can do when you're distorting all these different shapes in the vocal tract.
Yes.
And and shaping, narrowing the vocal tract and then widening it, and just all the different sounds, the brighter sounds, the darker sounds. And then, if you like, try to take a vowel and go through the vowel, going from and all these different sounds that your voice can make.
Yeah.
And then maybe you find the right sound for you and for what you want and how you want to express those lyrics.
Yeah.
And I know they all laugh. I hope that they go off into the practice room and do a little practicing. And of course, I encourage that they don't push and press, do it lightly. And know what you're, know when you're doing too much.
Yes.
And that's why I like the mic, because you can do so many things with the mic and be soft and not give, the fry can sound really, gritty sometimes when you're real close up to the mic, and yet you're going, hardly anything.
Yeah.
I don't have my mic here to demonstrate today.
You used a word earlier, kinesthesia.
Yes.
And it's a word that we use a lot here on the channel, kinesthetic awareness. And I think the importance of that, of developing good kinesthetic awareness, is because of you want to be physically connected to your voice, not just orally. But also, I think when it comes to this topic we're discussing, expressive singing, one of the dangers, perhaps, for beginner singers is that their body can rule the day in so much of the way they emote. And so everything gets a little bit out of balance. How do you encourage learner singers to manage their body in that expression without becoming emotionally driven, if that makes sense?
Oh, again, yeah, it's, again, it's individual, and we've got so many individually driven performers.
Yes.
And it's really, it's difficult, especially if they've been performing for a very long time and they are so used to being in a certain posture while performing. And so when I work with dancers or even those that are playing instruments, like guitar, for instance, I've worked with a lot of people playing guitar, and that posture, oftentimes, you'll have somebody slouched over the guitar, and they have to learn to have that upright position. And so that's really difficult for them to get back into that position. But it's, my job to help that, obviously, and help correct that position. And yet, once they get into that nice, perfect posture and are able to still do the chords, typically it's because they're looking at, the chords and trying to make sure they have the right chord.
Yeah.
So if you get somebody that's more proficient in their instrument, they're not going to have that posture.
Yeah.
And it might be just their neck, which we all do with storytelling. We want to be right in your face, telling our business, telling the story. Here, I need to tell you this.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot in theater with our musical theater students. And posture is such a hard thing because oftentimes with characters, when we're talking about musical theater, it could be a character that is a little bit more slouchy, but you can roll your shoulders forward and still have an expansion that connects, and not connects, but, expands around the whole body, however you've taught breathing. And, but you can just alter certain little parts of your body that kind of give you that look of collapsing the chest. And it's things that you learn as you go along, or you have a good teacher that will help you with that posture. And also even bending forward, like Eliza Doolittle. She doesn't have the best posture to begin with, and she's like, she's over here and she's bent over, but is my neck still in the right place? Is my am I aligned, even though I'm bent a little bit more forward, like I'm like but my alignment is okay, so I can sing on that, and it's not going to affect my voice as it would if I were like that.
Let me
protruding.
Let me swing the pendulum to the other extreme and ask, so we've just talked about those singers who in one sense find themselves over emoting physically. How do we go about helping those singers who find themselves either self-conscious, emotionally guarded, and they might even say of themselves, they're like, dead fish on stage. How do we help those singers to come out and of themselves to present?
Yes.
to express.
They need to feel safe.
Yeah.
They need to feel safe to begin with. And that the studio needs to be a place where they can feel safe enough to be creative. And they also have to have a teacher who is going to be, or allow them to be vulnerable. And, and it can be very intimidating, especially in front of your teacher or anybody who's watching you in a master class even, but you need to create that space where they're able to try new things and be okay if it goes, one way or the other, and have the encouragement that's backing them to continue to try again. Because as we know, everything new is pretty much going to be a motor learning aspect.
Yeah.
And so you may not, the first time you try something, it may not do well. You may not succeed to the point of where you want it to be. It's never going to be perfect the first time. It has to go through those, those different chapters of learning. And again, the encouragement of the teacher and the safe space is so important for everybody. And that's about it. It's the encouragement, I think, that it's okay if you don't get there the first time. It's okay if it's stumbling. It may take you longer. It may take you 2-3 times. It may take you 10 times. But typically you can see that it's progressing, and oftentimes with the commercial music that is so prominent today also in musical theater, there's a groove and a pulse that you have to feel.
Yeah.
And so, right. And so there are a lot of students who are a little bit, a little bit nervous about dancing and moving, whether they feel like they can dance well or not, I don't know. But I'll say I need to see that groove, or I need you to feel that groove. Let's try to feel that groove together. And so I might be sitting in a chair and I just kind of give them a little bit of my shoulders or something. And they may or may not come along, and I say, all right, you've got me out of my seat, and I'm up there dancing with them and getting the groove with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too, because then it becomes a fun learning situation, right? And a fun learning environment for them. And it really, really breaks down the walls for them, because they're not doing it by themselves.
Yeah.
And they're feeling it, and I know one of our grad students, we rotate our grad students through the program in the Masters of Vocal Pedagogy, CCM. And so I'll have one for one semester and a new one for the next semester. And I remember recently that one said, oh yeah, you're going to get a lot of dancing in that studio. But, as we know, the pulse really shows up in the voice, and the groove shows up in the voice when you've got that movement.
Yes.
And I find that so important, and I teach it in my styles class all the time. I get them up and dancing different styles of dances.
Yep.
If you're singing something that is Motown, Temptations, there's a different bum, ba, da, da, dee, da, da. You've got different dance style going there than what you would do with Usher or any of these other singers.
Yeah.
It's going to be different. The groove, the feel, the pulse, and they need to get it in their body, because it will not show up in their voice otherwise.
It's funny to hear you talking about that, because here on the channel, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, it might have even been last week. Anyway, I was saying the very, very same thing.
Really?
Yeah, I was. I was. So it's lovely to hear you talking about it, and I very much use that word, pulse. It's not about keeping time. It's about embodying the
No.
pulse and the groove, and they're very different things.
Right. And there's a lot of syncopation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that offbeat needs to be felt. And if they're not, it's, I'll ask them, where are you hearing the pulse? Or
Yeah.
I'll also ask them, I said, where do what instrument is giving you the pulse?
Yes.
And I would say that most of them would say the drums or the bass, string bass, not string bass, but bass guitar.
Bass guitar. Yep.
And I was thinking bluegrass.
Yeah.
But with pop, you're going to get it with the electric guitar and the drums, right?
Yeah.
And one time recently, I had a student that said, "Oh, it's in the piano," and I was like, "Listen again." So I mean, oftentimes you'll get that, that one person that will say an instrument that really doesn't have the pulse
Yeah.
in there, but that's what they're listening to.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's real for them. It's real for them.
Yes.
And then we have to redirect that ear to, the guitar or the drums or whatever is really creating the pulse for that. And it can be difficult at times, especially if they're not if they don't have that oral skill.
Yeah, I find that if the student can start to move, if we can start to, move with the song, there can be, not always, but there can be a natural finding of the groove and pulse just by starting to, move with the piece. And I think the body starts to find it, you know what I mean? And that's why movement is so important.
It's so important.
So important. You can't stand there like a stick figure and expect to embody the pulse. It's just, it's not possible.
But no, it isn't. And I think one of the, with those that have a little bit more challenge with singing and doing the pulse, it's kind of like playing the piano and singing. Yeah. It's a talent, right?
Yeah, it is.
Or even playing the guitar. I mean, I played the guitar when I did Maria in The Sound of Music, and I was like, oh gosh. I mean, I got it, but it took a bit, it took a minute there to get it.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think it's one of those things, where you have to do two things at once that are a little different. And so the coordination of that, especially if you're thinking vocally, I want to make sure that everything is going right vocally and that I'm not, over singing number one, I'm not pressing, I'm, all the things that you think about when you're singing.
Yeah.
And then put that, that dance or that pulse in your body. And it doesn't have to be a full out dance, right?
No. Yeah.
It just needs to be that pulse, but at least they got the pulse going.
Yeah.
And if they can keep that, that's great. But there are some that cannot keep the pulse. So I know it's one of those, pat your head.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting.
We've got a question that's come up from Patricia, and it talks to an area that I did want to discuss. So I wanted to bring it in. Would you consider getting into the character of the song the same as understanding the feel of the lyric? And I guess I wanted to talk about this idea of characterization versus expression.
Okay. All right. A lot of that goes hand in hand. Because the way, if I have a character, let's say we'll take the sidekick in the musical, which typically is a comedic person.
Yeah.
Let's say Carrie Pipperidge. I'll take Carrie Pipperidge because that Carousel was on Broadway, and that's, most people, I think general public knows Carousel if they've, know musicals. Carrie Pipperidge is a fun character. She certainly has a voice, and I think that you need to know what her voice sounds like. Every character has a voice,
Yeah.
and you need to know what that character's voice sounds like. So if she has, for instance, I did Carrie in a long time ago, a long, long time ago, but her voice was not the voice that you're hearing here. Her voice was more, Julie, do you like him? Did you like it when he put you on the carousel that way? So it was a little bit cutesy. Um, and she was a gullible person, but she was also down to earth. So there were times where, like, well, I'd slap him, you know. And so she had a lot of character to her. And I think that the first step is knowing what her speaking voice, or their speaking voice, I should say, sounds like. And then out of that comes the voice that's going to be heard in the song, because we know that speech-like vowels are present in musical theater and in pop culture music, right?
Yeah.
And so what does the speaking voice, and how do we carry that into it? So it comes into play when you go, his name is Mr. Snow. And so I have a little cutesy in there too. And that's Carrie.
Yeah.
It's Carrie Pipperidge. It was in a good place for me. It was in a good place, but that's how I wanted her to be. But I could also have her be like this. What are you, blah, 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 blah. And they go, his name is Mr. Snow. I could do it that way too. But that would be a different character, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Different feel.
Yeah.
So if we're speaking primarily towards character in musical theater, then I would also look at what the cast, the other players in the cast, thought about this person. What they, did they call her cutesy? Did they call her sweet? Did they call her, whatever, dumb? Then that would play a part in my my own description of who I am. So that would play a part, right? And then I would add to that different adjectives or whatever to fill out that character. Then I would also look at the music. And I would look at the music and I would say, just listen to every time that she is on stage or every time she is singing, what does her music sound like?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And how does that play in how I move on stage? Am I moving quickly? Am I moving slowly? Am I moving, totally lethargic? I mean, you hear things in the orchestra,
Yes.
in the instrumentation. If there's a little flute that's like, beep, 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 you know that's a little sprightly and you're going to be bright.
Yeah.
And it because it sounds bright.
Yes.
So you play along with that.
Yeah.
Then of course, if you have other instruments like the clarinet or oboe, then that there's going to be, it's kind of like Peter and the Wolf, right?
Yes.
That you have different instruments that describe the characters. And so I pay attention to that. I pay attention to the dynamics in the music. I pay attention to everything. I mean, it's not just one little thing and you think you can go out there on stage and just do it. So I think that it's all important.
Yeah, a word we use here in the Voice Essentials community a bit, mostly because I tend to use it a bit, is the word motivated. And pretty much everything you just said is establishing the point of motivation. And I love that is informing what the voice does. There's something that is directing your vocal expression. And last week I was working with a student, and she was singing a music theatre piece. And I got to the end of it and I said, so who's the character? What is she, And I kind of knew that this would be the case. She didn't know, and I said, well, that's where we have to start. We've got to first know, who is she, why is she singing, where is this in the story, the arc, the emotional arc of the entire. Anyway, all of these are drawing on and establishing motivation. Otherwise, everything just looks very robotic and unmotivated.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. And if you don't have the information, then you create the information. You need to know, they have the 4-actor questions. Who am I? You were mentioning those already.
Yeah.
And that's such an important thing. But then you can't leave out the music aspect,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And if you cannot answer those questions from what you've gained or gleaned from the script and the music, then you have to use the creative mind and come up with something that works for you and for what you are being asked to do on stage.
100%.
And this, honestly, this crosses over into commercial music so well, because so many songs in commercial music, they're not your story if you're covering them, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You're going to have to make up your own story. You may connect to it emotionally in some way, but you need to make it your own and be authentic yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I'm bringing up onto our screen there. I do need to bring. We've got to start bringing our show to an end. But I wanted to get
goodness.
you. Yeah, I know. I did tell you we'd get through this pretty quickly. I asked a very open question in the chat. What helps you sing with more expression? As you can see, we've had 14 votes. I'm going to end the poll and we'll have a quick talk about what the results give us from the 14. So here we go. And there's the result. So 50%, 7 people found that connecting deeply with the lyric was their road in. This result's interesting to me, because I must admit I thought this would be the bottom of the line, but breath work and vocal warm-ups is helping people sing with more expression. And then obviously the other two, moving my body, which we talked to, and listening to emotional singers. What thoughts have you got on those results?
Oh, no, I like them.
Yeah.
Because I think they all play.
They all
play an important part.
They do, don't they?
In training expression, because if you didn't have one, you can't have one without the other. And so it's all part of it. Even with the breathing, when you talk about some of the onsets and even some expression through breath.
Yes.
Because that has a lot to say in so much music that we hear, indie music, for instance, and even some of, Sarah Bareilles music, where you have those breathy onsets, and I mean, just, you can't do without the breath. And it's you need to have, the control and the, just basically at your fingertips of how to use that breath.
Yes.
In a way that you want to, whether it's on an onset or a release, or to give your freedom, voice freedom at a certain time if you've been overextending in a certain way. Yeah. So the breathing's very important. So as far as, what was one of the other ones I picked? Sorry. The words, looking at some of the words. You said something about words, right? I think that was one of them.
I possibly did. In the question?
Yeah, on the list.
Connecting deeply with the lyric.
Lyrics, correct. Yeah. All right. So in connecting deeply with the lyrics, one thing that we did not mention is what I call text painting, or coloring the lyrics and taking, like the word fall, for instance, can have a fall off in it, fall, so that you have a feel of that fall.
Yes.
Or, something with an onomatopoeia
Yes.
word,
Yes.
with it goes drip, drip. That's used a lot in rap,
Yeah.
for instance, a
Yeah.
lot in hip hop.
Yeah.
But if there is a word that is an onomatopoeia word, then we need to do something with that. We can't do, it's too darn hot, it's too darn hot. It's not done that way. It's too darn hot.
Hot.
It's hot,
Yeah.
and yeah, or drip, drip,
Drip.
drip,
Yep.
drip. We want to hear that it's dripping.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know your onomatopoeic words, then you look them up and you get that list and you go, whoa, didn't realize that was one.
Yeah.
But it's, you're imitating the sound of what that word
word
means.
says. And
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, what that word says. And that's an important way to connect to the lyrics and up your game, especially in musical theater, because it really does help with the storytelling.
Edrie, it has been such a thrill for me personally to have you on the show today. Thank you for coming on, and it's so late at night.
But I'm awake.
Yeah, but you're awake. I feel like I'm going about collecting the CCM Vocal Pedagogy Institute set. We've had Matthew, and we've had so many of you on, and it's, for me, it's a bit like putting the cherry on the top to have you on the show finally.
Oh.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you coming on, and hope we can do. You and I are going to get to meet personally in
Yes, we
in
are.
a couple of months in Toronto. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and
very excited.
And do you have any wisdom to leave us with as we finish up?
Oh, Lordy. I think in a nutshell, it's you need to remember it's more than just the music and the words.
Yes.
That you have to embody.
Yes.
The style, the vocal effects, the vocal emotion, whether it be through riffing. And remember, riffing always has to mean something. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
It has to mean something, and it comes from somewhere, because it's an extension of your voice, extension of the word that you just said, through emotion.
Yes.
And so if you leave that out, then you're doing a disservice to the lyrics and to the music and to your listeners.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be able to follow your story.
Yeah.
And what you're singing, and not enjoy it as much as they could enjoy it. And I hope that leaves you with something to think about.
It most certainly
when you
does.
go into the studio and sing practice.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody else.